In this video, we're going to learn about Jack Kerouac, the author of On the Road and one of the founding fathers of the beat generation. We're going to understand how the word beat can help us create a healing for ourselves. If you enjoy what you're about to watch, then please remember to click like, and thank you for subscribing to our channel. Now, for those of you who are familiar with my work and my writing, you would already know that Jack Kerouac has been a huge influence on my life. I'm reading Kerouac all the time. These are just a handful of the books on my shelf. Began what was known as the beat movement or the beat generation, coming out of a term that was coined by Jack. And I want to focus on this idea of the meaning of the word beat. So much about the writing that came out of the beat movement, out of the beat generation, is about personal awakening, spirituality, and self-expression. And even though this is a different time, I believe there's so much that we can learn from the beats. And simply by looking at that concept of the word beat will help create an awakening for us. There's an interview with Jack that's done all in French. Jack's family emigrated from Canada. They were French Canadian, and he didn't even speak English, the language of his dozens of books, until he was 6 years old. So in this French interview, he's asked, "What do you mean by the word beat?" And Jack immediately responds by saying, "Poor." Beat meaning poor, beat meaning beat down, beat meaning suffering. Now, you don't have to live on the streets to understand what it means to be beat down. How many of us feel beat down in our own lives? Or how many of us have felt beat down from what we went through in our own childhoods? So beat is a representation of hurt, of suffering, of the sense of poverty, emotional poverty, and struggle. Then the second concept that Jack was talking about behind the word was the idea of rhythm, that there was a rhythm to the suffering that was being expressed. He would talk in his poetry about the sound of the slaves in the slave ships. They were rowing the slave ships to the rhythm of a beat, or how the music of jazz and bebop from the 40s and the 50s, musicians expressing their suffering through intricate rhythms. So if you think about being beat down, that one, there's an awareness of our own beat down, but that there's a rhythm to the suffering that we go through, almost as if you could think that suffering that we have, that there's a sense to it, that there's a timing, that there's a story of something working through us, needing to be expressed. And I think Jack would say that that expression of that suffering coming through us is happening to the sound of a beat. Almost like a movement of music, a story, a narrative moving through us that has a rhythm to it. That the third concept behind the word beat is known as beatitude. Now, beatitude is a sacred concept, a kind of a feeling of ecstasy, of a spiritual high, of being detached from negativity and experiencing a sense of aliveness and awareness and awakening. Jack was on an interview with Steve Allen, the original host of The Tonight Show, with whom he did an album with. Steve played piano, and Jack read his poetry above the piano. And in that famous interview, Steve Allen asked Jack, "What do you mean by the word beat?" And Jack said, "Sympathetic." Sympathy is a feeling that we experience when we become mindful of our own suffering. Sympathy is the feeling that we experience when we become mindful of the suffering of another. Beatitude is this word that helps us to understand that feeling, that sense of sympathetic to ourselves, sympathetic to another, and sympathetic to all of humanity. Beaten down, our suffering, trauma, what we went through, and the feelings that are there with us. Beat, the rhythm of it, the suffering's moving through us. It needs to be expressed. narrative, of a story, of a symphony, and it wants to express itself through our lives, through a rhythm. And beatitude, where through this release, through this expression, through this detachment from the suffering, that we could reach these states of ecstasy, these states of release, these feelings of sympathy for ourselves and for others. Thank you for listening to all I had to say about Jack Kerouac and the concept of beat. If you're open, please leave a comment and let us know what's coming up for you about any of this. And if you want to try a Zoom session with me, we could use mirroring to be mindful of what beat energy you have going on and help you move into the rhythm of its expression and release. If you want to read more, check the link in the description to get the book. Thank you, my friend.